Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a video all about my memorable cinematic experiences. So, you're probably thinking, Karen, what the heck is this video? So a long time ago, like a really long time ago, I came across a list on Letterboxd. So Letterboxd, if you don't know, is a app. I basically call it like Goodreads, but for movies, where you can log all of your movies and such. I'll link mine down below for you guys to check out. Someone had put together a list on there with you can write notes on lists on Letterboxd, and they had written a list all about their memorable cinematic experiences. So not necessarily movies that you've loved or hated, but just times when you've been to the cinema and it was a memorable experience for some reason. And I thought that was such an interesting concept, and it stayed with me ever since, and I wish I could remember. I will try do some searching and I'll try find that list if I can. I'll link it down below if I can find it, but it's been a while, so I don't know. But that is the list that inspired this. I've been thinking about it ever since, and so I have put together, I've been working on this list I've been thinking about it in my subconscious and kind of mentally putting it together ever since I read that list. So I've got 11 movies here that I'm going to talk about. Like I said, not necessarily favorites, but ones that for some reason or another, which we'll get into, they were memorable cinematic experiences. So let's get into those movies, not books. This video is about movies. Let's jump into them. So the first movie that I want to talk about that was a memorable cinematic experience is the movie Matilda, which came out in cinemas in 1996. So this one is a memorable experience because this is the movie that, for a couple of reasons. For one, I remember going to see it, and I think we made a decision to go see it at the last minute, and so the cinema was packed. We had to sit in the very front row of the cinema, and it was the first and I think only time that I've ever done that, where you kind of had to crane your head back to be able to even see what was going on. It's also the first ever movie that I went to see at the cinemas twice. I say when we first went to see it and we were craning our necks, I saw it with my mom and my siblings. It maybe is a movie, Winifred, that's so rude, is a movie that maybe came out in school holidays and my mom took us to see. I'm not exactly sure. But then I remember a friend from school who I went to school with, her mom said to my mom, oh, I wanted to take the girls to see, I think the girl's name, we weren't super close friends, I don't remember her that clearly, but I think her name was Emma. And her mom was like, oh, I wanted to take, Emma really wants to see Matilda. I wanted to know if Karen wanted to come along to see it with her. My mom was like, oh, Karen's already seen it. And I was like, I'll go again. I really liked that movie because Matilda is one of my favorite movies, let's be real. And so I went again, and it's the first time, which has happened to me a lot over my life since then, that I've seen movies more than once in cinemas, but that was the first ever time that happened, and I will always remember. Because I remember being that part, kind of mini spoilers for the Matilda movie, the part where, because I don't think I'd read the book when I saw the movie. The part where Matilda and Miss Honey are in the Trunchbull's house, and then Matilda's kind of in the kitchen, and the Trunchbull comes barreling down that back staircase, and then you think Matilda's going to be caught, and then Trunchbull gets into the kitchen and Matilda's somehow managed to escape, and then you realize that she's hiding under the dining room table. I remember being so looking to watch my friend's reaction, because I obviously had seen it, so I knew where she was hiding, and seeing my friend be like, oh, how amazing, because to an 8-year-old, that was not even 8. Yeah, 8, I would have been 8. That was totally exciting. So that is the first memorable cinematic experience. The second memorable cinematic experience was the very next year in 1997 when I went to see Titanic in theaters. So I even checked what month this came out, it came out in December. So it's possible that I saw this in early 1998. But in any event, I was 9 years old. And my parents took us to see this. I think all 5 of us went together, my sister, my brother, and my parents. And this is a memorable cinematic experience because I had to leave the cinema because I was so distraught when people started dying. I guess kind of spoilers for Titanic, but it's based on a real story, so you know that people died on the Titanic, so is that a spoiler? Anyway, but the part that I mean in particular is when people were like, I think the first, so I left the cinema twice because I kind of went back in thinking that I would be okay now, and then I wasn't. I think the first time what happened was when the lower class people were trapped like below decks and they weren't letting them come up to try save themselves because they were lower class, and I was so distraught by that. Like I was so upset that my dad had to walk me out of the cinema, and I sat on the chair, like a little bench that, you know, they've got next to the cinemas when you're waiting to go in. I sat out there for a while. I think my dad went back in. Or maybe he waited with me, I don't remember. But I remember after a bit we were like, okay, either myself or me and my dad were like, okay, we'll go back in. And so we went back in, and then I was kind of okay, I think, for a little bit. But then when it got to particularly to the part where people were like throwing themselves off the boat, like just so desperate to try save their lives in some way, or even sometimes to have a quicker death rather than drowning slowly, whatever. So distraught that I was 9 years old. And this just goes to show what type of a movie watcher I am, because I'm a very emotional movie watcher. Yeah, I had to leave the cinema, and I will remember it forever. I've seen Titanic about 1,000,000 times since then. I love Titanic, but when I was 9 years old, I actually think maybe the second time I came out, my brother came out with me because he's younger than I am. So he would have only been like 7. He came out with me. So like, it was very distressing. Now I think about it, what is that movie even rated? Is it appropriate for children? Apparently my parents thought so. And obviously it was a hugely hyped release, which is presumably why we went to see it. But for 9-year-old Karen, extremely distressing. Now moving on to a movie that came out in 2001, we have Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So the reason that this is so memorable is partly before the movie even came out was when this movie was announced. I remember we were at home, my parents were in the lounge room, they were watching the news, which I always thought was really boring, and I just heard, I think I was doing something else, I was probably reading, to be honest, and then I heard something about blah, blah, Harry Potter, blah, 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 and it was the announcement, like they were talking about on the news that like, they were going to be making it into a movie. I lost my freaking mind. I don't think I've ever been as excited about a movie announcement, like ever in my life as I was then. Like, oh, I was so freaking excited. I almost like wet myself with excitement. And then my mum took me to see it. We booked tickets. We went on opening night in our theatre where we lived. And it was just, it was, I think, the first movie adaptation. I'd obviously seen movie adaptations before that, but it was one of the first movie adaptations I'd seen for something that I was so hugely invested in, something that I loved to the extent that I've loved Harry Potter. So that for me was a very memorable experience. Moving on to, I didn't know whether to include these in this list, but I'm going to. So we come to 2005, and the movie that was a memorable experience was Madagascar. You might be like, how is this a memorable experience? This was my first ever date. I went to see Madagascar in cinema in 2005. I was in my final year of high school, and I went on my first date that I ever went on, and I saw Madagascar, and it was really awkward. I've never felt so awkward in my life. Well, I have. We'll get to that in a minute. Like, I remember him specifically, the guy that I was on a date with, that as the, you know how like when the trailers and all of that are on, the lights are like still kind of on, like they're dim, but they're still on. And then as the opening part of the actual movie, the lights go completely dark. And it was right as the lights went completely dark and the screen went really bright that the guy I was on a date with was like, oh, you look so beautiful with the light of the movie screen on you like that. And I still to this day, it goes to show, like, yeah, who I still am as a human, have never felt so uncomfortable in my life because I can't take compliments. And it was just, even in my mind I was going, oh, this is so cheesy. I'm cringing with embarrassment just thinking about it, and I didn't know how to respond. I was just like, hey, thanks. It was really awkward. Anyway, so there's that. And then we get to the next one that I was even less sure that I should talk about, which is again in 2005, which is the movie Hitch, which is the movie where I had my first kiss, was while watching the movie Hitch. Well, technically it wasn't really while watching the movie. So it was the same guy that I went to see Madagascar with, and I just knew in my mind that he was gonna try kiss me, and I really didn't want to. I was just really nervous about it. I didn't want it to happen. And so I was just worried that if I even glanced in his direction during the movie that it was going to happen. So I have never watched a movie with such intensity. I was just like eyes locked on the screen, don't accidentally glance in his direction. And so the movie ended and the credits started to roll. And I don't think I've seen this movie since I saw it in cinema. And the credits started to roll, and so I looked over to him to be like, okay, movie's over, like I thought I was safe. And I don't know if you've seen that movie, I think it's one of those movies where in the credits, I think they're like, a wedding happens at the end, and there's like dancing, there's people like dancing down an aisle or something, if I recall. And so the lights hadn't completely come up, but I thought we were gonna walk out of the cinema, and as soon as I looked at him, it was on, and it was awful. It was frankly awful. It's the worst kiss I've ever had in my life. But like, is anyone's first kiss really that great? It wasn't really great. And thinking about it, I probably shouldn't mention this either. That guy was kind of creepy because it was 2005. I didn't check what month this came out. I had my first kiss when I was 6, so I was 16. And he was in his early 20s. He like had a professional job and like lived out of home. And at the time I thought he was like, I didn't even really like him that much, obviously, like I was scared to be kissed by him. But I thought it was so cool when I was 16 that he was older, and now as an adult, I'm like, that guy was a freaking creep. And I actually don't think I ever saw him again after that movie, but I was so turned off by that kiss apparently. Anyway, I can't believe I just talked about this on my channel. Whew! Moving along. So now we come to 2009, which is the movie Twilight New Moon. And this is a memorable cinematic experience because this is the first ever midnight screening that I went to. I didn't even really know that midnight screenings were a thing before this. And so right when this movie was coming out, I had recently moved into my first not my first, technically my second shared house experience, where I was living with strangers basically that I didn't really know, that we were all just like living in a house together, like sharing rent. And right when I first moved in, they were talking about, they were like, oh, we've got tickets to see the midnight screening. And I was like, oh, awesome. Like, because I also was a huge Twilight fan and was like, oh, that's so exciting. And they were like, oh, you should look up and see if you could come. And it was assigned seating because back then I don't think now everything you go to is assigned seating. But back then I don't think it was, unless it was like a big event, because they knew it was going to be packed, and that if they didn't assign seating, people would try to leave gaps, and then it was just a nightmare. So it was assigned seating, and we went on to look at it, to the session, and it just so happened that one of the free seats was right next to the seats that they had booked. And so I booked, and I went to my first midnight screening with these people that I didn't even really know that well. I'd known them for like a week, but we went to this midnight screening, and it was the first ever midnight screening that I went to. And it's funny because I then saw every Twilight movie after that at a midnight screening. So I saw Eclipse, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Breaking Dawn Part 2, also all at midnight screenings. But in fact, they're the only midnight screenings that I've been to. It's all Twilight movies. Interesting fact. But this was the first one that I ever went to. It's also the movie that I think I've seen the most in cinemas, because I saw this movie 3 times. I've seen a lot of movies twice, but I think this is the only one I saw 3 times. Because I saw it with those girls, I then saw it with my friends, and then I remember it must have come out late in the year, and I then travelled to Adelaide, where I now live, to visit my parents, and I went to see it with my mum as well. So I saw it 3 times, and it was so exciting. It was my first midnight cinema experience, and if you've been to midnight screenings for like opening night midnight screenings, like as in the movie's just come out and you're seeing it like the day it's releasing, then you know that it was like everyone who's there to see it at that time is there because they're a huge fan. So it was like such a great atmosphere. It was one of those times where like everyone oohed and ahed, and I remember when like Jacob took his shirt off, the whole cinema was like, ah, and it was just like, it was a whole thing. Oh, I'm getting a low battery warning, excuse me while I hit that off the screen. Yeah, it was like a whole thing. So there's that. The next movie I want to talk about is another Harry Potter movie, which is the last Harry Potter movie. We've got the first and the last, how appropriate, which is Deathly Hallows Part 2, which came out in 2011. The reason this is a memorable cinematic experience is because this is the first time I ever went to see a movie on my own. So I obviously am a huge Harry Potter fan, always wanted to see the Harry Potter movies in theaters. And when I was living in Canberra, which is where I was living when this came out, I didn't have friends who were like into Harry Potter, who would like have been that interested in going to see it with me. And there was one friend who I think I'd seen part 1 with, who I thought we were going to go see part 2 together, and then she ended up going with someone else, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was so desperate enough to see it that I was like, screw it, I'm going on my own. I would like to say that it was like a really rewarding experience, but it was actually kind of, you realize the issues of going to the cinema on your own. One, about halfway through that movie, I became incredibly busting. Like, I needed to pee so bad. And I always try to avoid going to the, having to go to the bathroom, like leaving the cinema to go to the bathroom in a movie. But sometimes when you gotta go, you gotta go. But I didn't know what to do because I was like, do I leave all my stuff? Like, I had like a drink and like, didn't have popcorn because I'm not a huge movie popcorn person, but I had like something and I had a drink and I was like, do I just leave this on my seat? Because like, what if someone does something to it when I'm not here? There's like no one to mind my stuff. And then I was like, there's also no one when you come back to say like, what did I miss? Because you don't know anyone. So I ended up not going and just like holding on and literally had to sprint to the bathroom when that movie finished. So it taught me about the dangers of going on your own, is to like be prepared better. But it was the first time. I've been on my own to the cinemas, I think only 2 times since then. Because for the most part now, if I really wanted to see something, I would just make my mum go see it with me. But there has been one occasion since I've lived here that I've been on my own. I've also seen, these aren't on my list, but I'll just mention I've seen Hunger Games, the first Hunger Games movie, and Love, Simon I saw on my own. Anyway, fun fact, bonus facts. So the next movie I want to talk about came out in 2012, which is The Impossible, which if my friend Emma is watching this video, which I'm sure she is, she's going to be laughing because she knows what I'm about to talk about. I went to see this movie with my friend Emma and my friend Tina. We used to go on like movie dates, movie dinner dates, the 3 of us all the time when I lived in Canberra. And I don't even know why we chose this movie to go see, but we did. And if you don't know, this is a movie that is set around the Boxing Day tsunami that happened that mainly devastated Thailand. It's fictional, but that's what it's surrounding, and it's surrounding a family of, I think, parents and 3 boys. It's based on a true story, but it's like a fictional, like based on a true story. And I have never cried so hard in a movie, and it was embarrassing. Like, I don't know why. Like I said, I'm a very emotional movie watcher. I always have been, but I was like heart-wrenchingly sobbing to the point where I was like almost couldn't breathe because I was trying to like smother my sobs because we were in public, that I was doing that like like noises because I was trying like not to, and I didn't have tissues because like I don't know why. I wasn't like prepared for the movie to be that sad, and it was just, it blindsided me. I wasn't prepared for it, and whew, I will always remember that, and I know Emma's going to be laughing if she's watching this. And then the next movie, she will also laugh because it's another movie that I saw on a movie date with Emma and Tina. I just thought this was a funny one to mention. It's the movie Spring Breakers, which came out in 2012. And this one I just thought was funny because it's the first time, it's happened to me once, I think, since then, that I went. So this is, if you haven't seen this, it stars, it stars Selena Gomez and Vanessa Hudgens. I think they both in it. And I think maybe Amber Benson. I can't remember. Anyway, not Amber Benson. I just was talking about her in another video. It's a completely wrong person. Ashley Benson, I think. Anyway, it stars like a bunch of like teen kind of movie stars who are kind of mainly wholesome kind of actresses, and we just thought this was going to be like a fun teen summer movie. That's not what this is. It becomes really weird about girls who get involved in like, I can't even remember, like they rob stuff. They get involved in crime, and it's like a whole thing, and the movie is really, really weird. And I remember like from the very opening credits, I was like, oh, this is different to what I anticipated, and then the movie was weird. And I remember literally when the movie ended and the credits started to roll, and it's like the first time this ever happened, I remember this whole cinema collectively, you could tell, was like, what did we just watch? And I'll say it was memorable. I'll always remember it because of that. So like I said, I've never been in the cinema where like everyone collectively was like, that was so weird. Another bonus movie that I'll mention that it also happened with was the movie Only God Forgives, starring Ryan Gosling, because I think everyone who went to see that, like, this is the reason I went because Ryan Gosling was in it, and then that movie is really strange, and like there's some weird shit that happens in that movie. And I remember afterwards, like the whole cinema was kind of like, we didn't realize what we were in for. Anyway, bonus. I have 2 more to mention. So the next one I want to talk about is Deadpool, which came out in 2016. And this is just a nice cinematic experience because my whole family went to see this together. So not like my parents and well, not including the younger kids because it's inappropriate for children, but all the adults in my family. So my sister, my sister's husband, my mum, my dad, my brother, my brother's girlfriend, and myself, we all went together to see this in cinemas because we were really anticipating, my dad in particular, my dad was hugely anticipating this movie. And so we all went to see it together. It was just a nice, like, fun experience. We've never done that before where, like, my whole, like, family all went together, and it was a lot of fun. And I would love to do that again, except now none of my family, except my parents, live close to me anymore because everyone abandoned me. Anyway, so there's that. And then the final movie that I just want to mention is a very recent one, and that was when I went to see Avengers Endgame, which again I saw twice, but I'm talking specifically about the first time that I went to see it. I went to see it with my dad on opening day. And it was just one of the best cinema experiences that I've had, where the whole cinema was just in the exact right. Obviously, we were all excited to see it. That's why we were there on opening day. And we were in the exact same frame of mind. Everyone was reacting in the exact same way. Everyone was oohing and ahhing and gasping and laughing and all of it at exactly the same moments. And it was just, the vibe in the cinema was so great. Like, it was just one of the best, like, experiences. And I think I'm so aware of how great that was because I went to see it a second time, and not that much later, like later that same week, I think it was, with my mum, and it was a very different vibe in the cinema. Partly, I think, because there were some children in there who I don't think should have been in there, but whatever. And I think that partly is why, but I think because of the stark difference between the two experiences, I still enjoyed seeing it a second time, but the first time was just such a great experience that I just loved seeing that movie so much. So that's it. I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing about some of these memorable cinematic experiences. You got to know a lot more about me in this movie than what in this video than what I think I ever planned to reveal about myself on my channel. So, which is funny because these ones that aren't about books don't get that many views. So I don't know, hardly anyone who watches my channel will probably even get to see all these fun facts. So there's that. I would love to chat with you guys if you have seen any of these movies, if you had memorable experiences, or just your own memorable experiences that you've had in theaters for whatever reason. I would love to chat about that in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more bookish or movie content on my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye, guys.